Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid, and you can always watch us on Galaxy 19 satellite, Muslim Network.tv, Amazon Fire TV, as well as Roku and YouTube and social media all over. Pretty soon we'll be on Apple TV as well. And today is Juneteenth. That was the day finally people in Texas found out that slavery is over. So, despite all the challenges in our society, this is the day of celebration and marking. But those people did not know for a long period of time. They did not have a place to celebrate either. Many of them actually were murdered because they wanted freedom, because freedom has been declared. That's a history. And one person who, before slavery ended, who started looking for his freedom, were a scholar, Umar bin Said. He was from the West Africa. He was brought here as a slave to South Carolina. He ran away from the slavery because he was born free. He wasn't a scholar. And some people think he might be some type of prince or something. But he was caught in North Carolina, taken to the prison. And on the wall, he found something, some charcoal or something. He will write in Arabic, appeal for his freedom, that I am a free man, why I'm turned into a slave. And some person who knew Arabic language recognized, got him out, and he remains in his slavery, but as a more or less an honored person. And we'll talk about that also today as a gift of Juneteenth. But today we'll also talk about power, not only just power, but united power. Today we'll take, we enjoy 9 to 5 work day. Well, most of us, that is. And a weekend is free from work. It was not always the case. It happened just a century ago. How did it happen? Because people came together. Labor unions were formed. People organized. And that's how America and the world enjoys that. So power is neither good or bad. There are organizers who organize communities to achieve certain goals. And organizers say power is not set, it's relational. People power has the ability to alter relationships. It is said President Obama was one such organizer. That was long time ago, before he became a politician and left organizing. He was trained by United Power, and United Power, I work with them. I'm trained with the United Power. It's a nonpartisan community organization composed of 40 religious congregations, not-for-profit organization, hospitals, healthcare centers, and civic organizations in all across the Cook County. Its volunteer leaders are its backbone. They are concerned citizens who consult with neighbors, shape goals and strategies to address pressing social problems, and pressure people in power to seek positive, creative solutions. And when people organize, they achieve goals. And I, as a part of the Muslim community, was working with the United Power for Action and Justice in Chicago. And we organized together for a major change in Illinois. And that change, Illinois used to be 48th worst state in America when it comes to healthcare. But thanks to the organizing, thanks to the relational power, it became the second best state. How did that happen? The person who led that effort, my dear friend, Greg Pierce. Welcome to Muslim Network TV, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Gregory Pierce is the president and co-publisher of ACTA publication in Chicago. Greg is the author of best-selling books. Actually, 10 books he has written. Best-selling are Spirituality at Work, The Mass is Never Ended. He's leader of the Industrial Area Foundation, I met him through his work for the United Power for Action and Justice in the greater Chicagoland. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy Juneteenth.
All right. I mean, in the midst of Black Power movement and all the sadness and the pandemic, and there's so many poor people are lost. 20 million plus people are jobless. In New York, they say 1 in 4 a person is in need of food. There is a still cause to celebrate. A long time ago, somebody showed up in Texas to say, "Hey, slavery is over."
That's right. That's right.
Juneteenth, yes. You are engaged in writing a book, and you have decided to have a chapter on Umar bin Said. How you came up with that idea?
From you, actually. It was from you at first. I said, I need to know someone who wrote about power or powerlessness back before the country was formed. And you said, do you know about Omar bin Said? And I didn't. I should have, but I didn't.
Oh,
And so I went looking.
knew about it, and we discuss it further. Oh, thank you so much for giving me a credit.
And you are going to write one of the essays in the book as well.
Yes, I will certainly. I will certainly write an essay on the book. That's my promise, and I have started taking notes. And the book is about power, isn't it?
Yes, it's about power from the point of view of organizers and leaders. So what I went looking for is about 40 essay stories mostly, about people who had experienced either power or powerlessness and had written that up. Either they had already done it, like Omar bin Said, or I encouraged them to write it, like I am doing to you. We're going to have 40 or 50 essays in the book. It's going to be called Reveille for a New Generation. Organizers and leaders reflect on power. It's going to be out on election day.
And those of you who have not heard about Umar bin Said was captured in West Africa. West Africa had about 30% of Muslim population at that time. He was captured and he brought to the Carolinas. And that's where from South Carolina, he ran away. He was a free man. He was an Islamic scholar. We don't know if he was an imam or not, but he was a learned person. He knew how to read and write. He has written his autobiography, which was lost. We knew in the literature that he wrote, but it was lost. It was rediscovered by Tariq Beard. And he was a Muslim born and raised in Chicago, an African American. And then he dedicated about 15 years of his life collecting close to 48 artifacts and things associated with Umar bin Said. And he insisted that Library of Congress, when he was sick about 2 years ago, he passed away. May God have mercy on his soul. He insisted and convinced the Library of Congress to have that collection. And Library of Congress has made it public by digitizing the whole thing. And once we can physically move, once you're in the Library of Congress, look up for the collection. He was a very honorable person. I have read the whole autobiography, and I brought it to Chicago for the exhibition at the Sabal Museum, and organized a day-long symposium there around that for the display and focus of the liberation movement. So it's on Juneteenth. We are celebrating Juneteenth, but at the same time, we're marking the continuous struggle to be free and strive for peace and justice. And that's where power comes in, Greg.
And we also have to know our history. We have to know our history. For example, the estimates are anywhere from 10 to 30% of the slaves who were brought from Africa, enslaved people, were Muslim.
Yes.
You taught me that.
Yes. Yes, they were. And there was a struggle in West Africa, which many people in America don't know, against the slave trade. African started a whole struggle against the slave trade. And leader of that campaign was a scholar, Usman Dan Fodio. And he was from the same area Umar bin Said was. As a result, people who were against slave trade will come together and became concentrated in West Africa. Some were Muslim, some were non-Muslim, but gradually that area became a Muslim majority area because of the struggle of that Islamic scholar against the slave trade. So if you visit Gambia today, there is an island named after Kunta Kunte. Kunta Kunte is Alex Haley's great father, who he traces history to, who was a Muslim slave who were brought to America. Alex Haley is the same person who is author of Roots and wrote the biography of Malcolm X. So that Kunta Kunta now is serving as an island at the museum, and there is a fort and the guns which the slave traders have. So there is a whole lot of history. But let's get to the United Power.
Yes.
Tell me the story of how United Power, which is a part of Industrial Area Foundation, originally probably a Catholic initiative, made Illinois the second best state in the country, working to get all kids program adopted. Nearly 900,000 Illinois residents, including kids and the families, were covered under that program. So 48th worst state Illinois was in terms of healthcare. And because of this organizing and mobilizing power, it became the second best in the country. How did you do that?
Well, here's the Industrial Areas Foundation that you mentioned. It's been around for 80 years. And we have about 60 organizations around the country and in a few other countries, actually. And each organization tries to build power locally. And we build it in 4 ways. One is we only work with diversity. We insist that the organization represent the communities in which it operates, and that we cut across all the divisions that we have, whether those divisions are race or creed or economics or even geography. So that's the first thing we always do.
Diversity.
And when we started here, one of the groups that we needed to join us was the Muslim community in Chicago. And we worked really hard. You were part of that, to get them in at our founding convention. And then, when the 9/11 happened, about 4 years after our founding, we had to say, what can we do about that? And we decided to have a welcome to our Muslim brothers and sisters into Chicago. We called it Chicago and Islam. And 2,000 Muslims and 2,000 non-Muslims met at Navy Pier one day on a Sunday. And we had 2 hours of just getting to know one another. And we've been working together ever since. Now, that's true not just of Muslims and Catholics, but it's true across the board in terms of faith, geography, race. Right now, in the midst of what we're going through now with Black Lives Matter, it's even more important that race be an important part of that discussion. So after we started working together, one of the issues that came up was healthcare. And we decided that we couldn't wait for the federal government to do anything about it. We had to do it here in Illinois. And so we worked to get as many people as we could covered by health insurance. And we started with kids care, then we did family care, then we did young adult care.
Greg, I thought the first thing which we tried was everybody in Illinois who to be covered, and we were not successful in that. And then we went for the kids care program. Is that the sequence of it?
That's right. Pieces of the time. We
decided power organizing, you have success and you have failures also. You learn from the failure and you would take a different step.
You can only do what you have the power to do. And so the stronger we are, the more power we have. So right now we're trying to build 2,000 new homes in the south and west sides of Chicago.
Before we go to homes, we will have time to come back to homes. Tell me that when we were organizing, I want people to understand how organizing works, taking the example of All Kids program. So we discussed that in the executive committee. I was present. I think I moved the resolution to support, and everybody debated. So a committee. And then we took to what? There were steps, right, in organizing?
Well, the first step, what we call it relational power.
Okay.
It's based on one-to-one meetings between human beings. And we do it before we decide what issues we can take. So with you, for example, you and I have had several one-to-one meetings where we've gotten to know each other, trust each other, know what things we share, what values we share. And that allows us to say, can we go into action around issues together? So we call that relational power.
So first what came the relationship
Yes.
between people, and then they came together. Then what?
Then they have to decide, what issues do we care about together? And we can't solve everything. We cannot solve everything. And we are not good Samaritans, the way it's thought of, where we're just trying to help individuals. We're trying to change the basic way that society deals with justice for all. So it takes power to do that. So we decide as a group what issues we're going to take on. At the beginning, the first issue was healthcare. And when that Barack Obama guy you mentioned, when he went to Washington, one of the things he took with him was some of our ideas, like insuring all young adults on their parents' insurance until they were 26 years old, or in the case of veterans, 29 years old. And that's still part of the Obamacare. So it takes power to win on those issues. And the power comes from our relationships. The other thing we do is we insist that we not have individual membership. It's got to be groups, like you mentioned. Groups like a mosque or a church or your CIOGC organization here in Illinois. They have to join as a group so that we have increased power coming from all the groups getting together and saying, we will work on certain issues. We can't work on everything. Some things we might even disagree about. But the things we can do something about, the things we can agree on, then we go into action. And we try to break problems down into what we call issues. Issues are things that you could do something about, that you have enough power to do something about.
So once we decided in the executive committee meeting that all kids care is something which we're going to push, then it went into 300-400 people, and then there was a very large gathering of several thousand people, in which we brought politicians and put them on his part about these issues. So could you take us a step further? Once a relationship came into being, people are together, they decided this is something which they want to pursue, and then what?
Then you have to decide who can deliver what you need. Sometimes it's a politician. Sometimes it's someone from the corporate world. Sometimes it's the media that has to be dealt with. So you have to design actions. We call them actions, where we get anywhere from 5 people to 5,000 people, depending on what we need. And we get the people that have the power to do something about it in front of us, and we say, will you do this? And it's amazing when you put somebody in front of 5,000 people that are united and demanding the same things and are well organized. Awful lot of people say yes.
So there were, at that time, I remember there were close to 60 or 80 organizations.
Yeah.
Several thousand people came. One of the things I always remember is when the politician was state, you have everything orchestrated. Who is going to ask what need to be done? And they were asked point blank, are you going to support this or not?
Yeah, yes or no.
Not to deliver a speech, but to say yes or no.
That's right. After you say yes or no, then you can deliver a speech.
Okay. You're watching Muslim Network TV, and this is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with my dear friend, Greg, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I have with me a leader of the United Power for Action and Justice, Greg Pierce. Greg, you started talking about four things makes United Power organizing different. And one of that thing was you insist on diversity. What were the other three things?
Well, the other three, one I mentioned is we always work on relational power rather than power, dominant power, or power from the top down. We are based on, we always say that you have to have relationships before you need them. So you have to have met your fellow human beings in other organizations and other groups prior to when you want to get together. You can't just say, well, now it's an emergency. Now we have to get together, but we don't know each other. So relational power is one.
So
Another thing is
relationship. You have to have relationship before you need it.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes. And then the other thing we insist on is we call it the iron rule. So you know what the gold rule, the golden rule is, he who's got the gold gets to rule.
Mm-hmm.
That's my joke. The iron rule is never do for people what they could do for themselves. And so we base a lot of our organizing on training and development of leaders. The organizers are not the people that are out there leading these things. They are people that are looking for people like you and other people that are watching this show who want to learn how to get power for themselves and their institutions. And we will teach them how to do that. So that's the second thing. And then the final thing I want to say is we are also, I call it fiercely nonpartisan. We do not endorse candidates for office. Some of our individual member groups do, but we do not. Why is that? Because the day after the election, no matter who wins, we're going to be there trying to hold them accountable. And so we can't do that if we've endorsed their opponent. Or even if we endorse them, we can't do it. And so we do not take positions on, we encourage people to vote, certainly. We encourage people to get understand the issues, but we do not endorse people for office. So those are the four things we do. We diversity, institutionally based, nonpartisan, and the iron rule.
Okay, so iron rule. So could you repeat the iron rule and give me some example of how that plays out in actual organizing in Chicagoland area?
Sure. Well, the first thing in the iron rule is you never do for people what they can do for themselves. Okay, so we are not politicians. If you think about what a politician is, you mentioned our friend Barack Obama. He was an organizer, but only for a year because it took too long. He wanted to do it faster. And he said, the way I could do it faster is if I could do it for people by running for office. So he did. And he ran for office and he was incredibly successful and did a lot of good. But he wasn't an organizer. What he was saying to people was, elect me and I'll do it for you. We, on the other hand, say to people, you do it for yourself. I mentioned before, we're trying to build 1,000 homes in Lawndale, which were, the community was destroyed way back in the Martin Luther King riots, and it was hit again in the recent riots. And a lot of the housing has been decimated. There's like one neighborhood has 700 city-owned lots that are empty. 700.
In Lawndale of Chicago.
Yeah, Lawndale. And we're saying, you give us that property for nothing, for free. And we will help that community organize to build 1,000 houses in that community. It would transform Lawndale. It would transform the schools. It would transform the police relationship with the community. But we don't do it for people. We're saying you, as the leaders in Lawndale, have to get organized and demand this from your politicians, including the mayor. We have a new mayor in Chicago about a year ago, Lori Lightfoot. And when she was running for office, we only asked her one question. We said, Ms. Lightfoot, if you are elected mayor, will you meet with us within 90 days? And she said, of course, she said yes, because she was running for office. Well, she won. So the next day we called her up and we said, you remember that promise you made to us? How about September 24th? And she said, okay. So she came expecting maybe 50 people in Lawndale. The meeting was in Lawndale. It was a United Power meeting. But 50 people did not show up. 500 people did not show up. 1,000 people did not show up. 1,251 people showed up.
Wow.
And when she walked in, and it included Muslims, Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, white people, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Muslim. It was a microcosm of Chicago saying, will you work with us to make this happen? And you know what she said? Yes. So now we got to hold her.
She was put on a spot. Will
Yeah.
you do that?
Yeah. And she said yes. Now it's our job to hold her to that. And so we're having regular meetings with her and her staff to figure out how do we build 1,000 homes in Lawndale in a year or 2 years. And we can do that if we have enough power.
Okay. So once you achieve the stated goal, I mean, you got the politician to commit to it, then you have a lot of homework to be done. So are there, in different organizations, there are different models. There are, people have a staff and a staff is working on things. How United Power works. I mean, you say that we emphasize the volunteer leadership,
Yeah.
but there is a role of full-time staff as well.
Yeah, but you know what? Each of our organizations usually has one staff person, one organizer who's paid, sometimes two, never more than that. We don't have staffs of 15 or 25 people because our job is really to find the leaders and to train them in how to do it for themselves. So we are never the spokes. That's why you don't know who the organizers are very often, because they shouldn't be up front. That's the difference between an organizer and a politician. The politician wants to be in front. The organizer wants to be in the back of the room.
Okay. So tell me this. Now that mayor has committed, tomorrow is another group is organizing June 2020 for Poor People's March in Washington, D.C. So, of course, digitally happening. We're also part of that. But, poverty is rising. You have taken one issue in Lawndale that 1,000 houses will be built, and mayor has agreed to that. What is the process between getting a commitment from politician and making it actually happen? I mean, in the case when you are mobilizing for all kids care, it went to Illinois Assembly, Senate passed, and you got the governor, Blagojevich, to sign, and it became a law.
Right.
So the process is clear.
Yep.
In the situation of Lawndale, 1,000 houses will be built, which will have impact of essentially transforming the neighborhood, which nothing has happened there since Dr. King marched and got beaten up.
But the key is that it's not going to be somebody from the outside of that community coming in and telling them what they need or what kind of houses we should build. If they are going to be making all those decisions. And so they've got to get organized, and they are. We've got a great homeowners group down there now. We've got several institutions in the community, and they have got to get themselves organized to the point where they say, this is where we want to build, what we want to build. These are the people that are going to live in it. This is how it's going to work. They've got to make sure that they have the schools and the police and the social services and the hospitals. There's a big hospital, Sinai Hospital, right in the middle of that community.
Mm-hmm.
They are one of our member institutions. So working with them, trying to figure out how to make a real community of its own. We've done this many times. The best example probably is the Nehemiah Project, which is out in East Brooklyn.
Which project?
It's called Nehemiah, after the prophet Nehemiah in the Old Testament. And it was organized by your friend of mine, Mike Geekin, but it was led by all the people in that area. They organized, and they took an area that was at least as bad as any area in Chicago, and they built 6,000 homes. Took them 20 years, 6,000 homes. and totally transformed East New York. You can go there now.
Yeah,
It's
it's
called,
in New York. I mean, I have gone to Philadelphia, where
Philadelphia.
in Philadelphia there is used to be a musician, Mr. Gamble, Luqman Gamble. Now he's an imam in the Muslim community. He has transformed the whole neighborhood. I mean, if you're driving there in downtown of, I mean, in that neighborhood close to downtown in Philadelphia city, suddenly you say, what happened? Because suddenly everything looks so good as long
Well,
as you're in neighborhood. So he was among the people who were highly appreciated and how they organized the neighborhood. But I will go in New York and look into that neighborhood.
please, we'll give
they
you a
do?
tour. We'll give you a tour. We'll give you a tour.
Yeah.
But here it is. It has to be large scale, and it has to be fast. It can't be one house here, two houses over there, and then go over to another community. It's got to have a big impact to actually transform the community, because what you really want to do is you want to get the private market also wanting to build houses there. So it's not just our building the houses, but also you want to get the whole economy of that neighborhood turned around. Lawndale, if you go to Lawndale at the corner of Ogden and Pulaski, downtown is like, it looks like you could touch it. It's right there. It's wonderful property, but it's got to be transformed by the people that are there. Nobody from the outside, including us, can go in there and tell people what they need. It's the iron rule is never do for people what they can do for themselves.
So what's the role of organizers at this moment in Lawndale community? What are they doing?
We are trying to find and train new leaders and new organizers. We found two young Black women in their 20s, both of them want to be organizers. We're hiring them. We're going to give them a 90-day trial. If they like what they're doing and we like what they're doing, we will hire them. We are looking for organizers all over the country. So if there are some people in their late 20s, 30s, 40s that are watching this, and you want to be an organizer, call Malik up and he'll give you my phone number. Like that.
All right. So one of the things I would say is that when the Black Lives Matter protest started in Chicago, for some reason, in some areas, there was some conflict took place between Latinos and Black communities.
Yep.
Well, Lawndale is one example in which Blacks and Latinos are working with each other. Mm-hmm. So how an organizer helps mediate conflict?
Before it happens, that's the first thing. What has to happen in Chicago? Chicago's been divided for years, maybe ever, I don't know, of playing one group off against another. You know what Mike Royko used to say, that the motto of Chicago in Latin was ubi est mea, which means where's mine? So that's how Chicago's always operated, and it can't operate that way. It's got to be where's ours? How do we work together to make this city the great city it could be? And that has to happen through thousands of one-on-one relational meetings between leaders of Lawndale and the other communities. We've got a lot of that going on right now.
You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Greg Pierce, who is a organizer and a leader of Industrial Area Foundation, with whom United Power for Action and Justice is connected. We'll be right back after these messages.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. Past campaigns covered a wide range of humanitarian concerns. Through Bosnia Task Force, imams and leaders of Chicago's Muslim community worked to ensure Bosnia became a top national issue. This led to life-saving American policies in Bosnia. A key accomplishment was helping to get rape declared a war crime. Initiatives also included Kosovo Task Force, Central African Republic Task Force, and Flint Coalition, which brought awareness to the water crisis affecting the people of Flint, Michigan. Highlights of our work include supporting Black Lives Matter, Parliament of the World's Religions, addressing climate change.
So wasteful consumption starts the ruthless production, and that's where we need all the fossil fuel in the world.
And prominent media exposure.
This is Imam Malik Mujahid, President of Justice for All.
And I'm the Director of Outreach for Justice for All.
And that's why we need to go back to what worked.
Today we're demanding an apology from the CEO of Costco.
The Chinese crackdown on Uyghurs and other Turkic people has only gotten worse.
Current programs such as Burma Task Force advocate for the rights of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, internally displaced populations, and all those denied freedom of movement and at risk of starvation. Through this, we mobilized thousands of calls to elected representatives. This paved the way for the U.S. to increase funding for Rohingya refugees from $30 million to $210 million. Two of our documentaries were featured on international news outlets. The Rohingya People, a slow-burning genocide, on BBC World News, and Rohingya Refugees Tel Aviv Massacre was featured on CNN. We've organized rallies, UN mission visits, expanded presentations on campuses, promoted research and report writing, outreach to think tanks, media, and other influencers. Faith Coalition educates about the Rohingya genocide and crimes against humanity faced by ethnic groups in Burma. We've traveled to refugee camps, convened a meeting of Karen, Kachin, and Rohingya leaders, both to encourage cooperation and to guide them in congressional outreach. We organized Rohingya Advocacy Day. This led to over 100 participants visiting the offices of 60 U.S. senators and congressional representatives. Free Kashmir advocates for the people of Kashmir. Long-term goals include the call for self-determination, the end of the Indian military's occupation of the territory, and raising awareness of Kashmiri issues among the American people. After the August 5th reinvasion of Kashmir, we organized national protests in front of various Indian government buildings, partnered with Stand With Kashmir, and launched a petition condemning the Gates Foundation's decision to present Prime Minister Modi a humanitarian award. Save Uyghur informs Muslims and neighbors of other faiths about the ongoing cultural genocide of Uyghur Muslims and mobilizes public support. Our projects include boycotting Chinese products with our Fast from China campaign, pushing Bill S-178 in the Senate, and organizing a nationwide protest of Costco. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Greg Pierce. One of the things which Greg, I keep hearing in the United Power meetings and people and organizer and all that is extraordinary emphasis on relationship. And you mentioned relationship should exist before you need it. Now, human beings, there are billions of them. How you decide which relationship which you're going to work with and start with?
Well, first of all, you do them one at a time, for starters. It's not thousands of people at one time. It's one-to-one. We call it one-to-one relational meetings. That's the start. And what are you looking for in a relational meeting is people that have a certain fire in them, passion about the world as it should be. That they are angry or upset or want to see something happen. And we call that self-interest. It's different from selfish interest. Okay, selfish interest is ubias mea, where's mine? Self-interest is, what is my interest in relationship with everyone else's interest? We call it the common good. How do we determine that? Now, not everybody agrees. First of all, there's a lot of people that don't want to get involved in anything. I never meet with those people more than once. Because if they're happy with the way things are and they don't want to get involved, that's fine. But I'm looking for people that are passionate. We call it what makes people tick. Self-interest. What is it that at their very core? Another word for it is their lifeline. What has been the thing in their life that they really cared about from the beginning to the end? Is it justice? Is it love? Is it something even more tangible than that? So we all live in the world as it is, all of us. And in the world as it is, there's lots and lots of problems. There's lots and lots of people that don't have any power. But in the world as it should be, we can organize people into organizations that can actually do something about the things people care about. So we say there's only one source of power: organized people and their organized money together.
You emphasize that you want to go and work with organizations and recruit them, and organizations are member, individuals are not. So how you place the role of one-on-one meetings while, so it means you end up selecting only those people who are already organizational leaders?
No, they select themselves. We are looking for leaders. There's no doubt about it. Leaders are people that have followers and can deliver those followers to an action, to a meeting. So when 9/11 happened and the Muslim community here in Chicago was under attack, we used all of our leaders got together and said, what can we do about it? And they turned out 4,000 people. The Muslim leaders turned out 2,000 and the non-Muslim leaders turned out 2,000. And at one point in that action, which I was honored to be one of the co-chair, along with one of the Muslim leaders, we stopped the meeting, completely stopped the meeting at Navy Pier. There were 4,000 people in the room. And we said, now find somebody who you do not know and doesn't look like you, and have a one-to-one with them for 15 minutes. So in that on Navy Pier, in their main ballroom, we had 2,000 one-to-one meetings at the same time.
I remember that. I was one of those.
Do you?
People. Yes.
All right. So do my kids. My kids were 10 years old at the time, and now they're 30. And they remember it.
All right. Why it was important to do a large thing, a mass one-on-one meeting? Why it was critical at that time?
Well, here's what a lot of groups do. They say, let's pass a resolution about Black Lives Matter or about the Muslims or about the Native Americans. Let's pass a resolution that says we support them, blah, 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 blah. We say, you've got to get organized to the point where you can start to do something together. You've got to be able to do it together. Whether it's, some of the issues we're working on now are gun violence, housing that we've mentioned, healthcare. One of the big issues we're working on now is mental illness, because 30% at least of the people that are in our jails and prisons shouldn't be there. They are picked up 30% minimum. Because they are picked up in some kind of an episode that they get caught up in because of mental illness or drugs or a lack of drugs or whatever, like they're not taking their drugs. And the police only have one choice. Well, actually, they have two choices. One is they can send them to jail. And that's historically what's mostly happened, is they get the police officer arrests the person, takes them down, book them into the legal system. The other option is to take them to a emergency room in a hospital. And then when they take them in there, the policeman has to stay with them until they're completely dealt with. So police officers are ending up spending 5, 6, 7 hours sitting in an emergency room. There is an alternative that we're working on right now, is to develop, first of all, we have to train the police in what's called crisis intervention team training. And we've got about half the police officers in Illinois now trained for that. So they understand that they're dealing not with a crime, but with an episode of mental illness or caused by mental illness or drugs or something like that.
Yeah, that is extremely critical. I mean, in Georgia, just on May 28th, a young person who police knew has the mental health issue, because they have taken him to hospital before. He was shot dead because probably they did not have that particular training which you're talking about. So that training is provided by who? Physicians?
It's provided by the state of Illinois, but we made sure that it was available to police officers in each of their home counties by working with the sheriffs and the other law enforcement, rather than having to go down to Springfield to take the training, which was not working. The other thing, though, is we also have to develop what's called crisis stabilization units near hospitals or attached to hospitals, that where the police officer does not have to take the person into the emergency room. They can take them to a crisis stabilization unit, might be connected with the hospital, and immediately sign them over to people that know how to handle that. So we've already developed, I think, 3 or 4 in Illinois, up in the northern part of Illinois, but we need about 10 of them total to be able to have a real alternative to jail and a real alternative to the emergency rooms.
So these are staffed by medical professionals
and behavioral health. It's not a medical issue. They're not bleeding. They don't have COVID-19. They are experiencing an episode. I like to call it an episode. And they need somebody to calm them down. Part of the thing these places have is like a living room where people can just sit and calm down, make sure they're on their medications. If they're taking medications, call their families, get their families to come and pick them up. If they need an overnight, these places have 5, 6, 10 beds that they can keep people overnight.
So tell me, this major achievement came through, some groups in United Power had this need and they articulated, we want to start organizing around that.
Well, we had a meeting out in DuPage County a few years ago, about 500 people, and about I'd say 25% of them were Muslim. And they talked about, I wasn't there, but they talked about what issue should we take on next. And they said, well, here's 4 issues that have been discussed in our one-on-ones. So everybody that wants to do this issue, go to this corner, this issue, go to the other corner. The people that went to the one on mental illness was about half the crowd. And so then we knew that was an issue that people cared about and would do something about. That's when we started this process of dealing with that particular issue.
Greg, tell me this: what are the basics of a successful one-on-one meeting?
All right. First thing is be there on time, and the second thing is leave after 40 minutes. So the one-on-one should not be 2, 3, 4 hours. It's not the length of time. It's what you do in the 40 minutes that you have. And what you're trying to do is get the other person to tell their stories about who they are, who they really are, their deepest values and experience. And the only way you can do that is if you yourself are willing to do that with them. So what happens is my mentor, and I know you know him too, Ed Chambers, was the head of the IAF years ago. He used to call it a mixing of 2 human spirits. That's what a one-on-one is. of mixing of two human spirits. It's an art. It's not a science. And that's why you got to learn it. That's why the job of the organizer is to teach leaders how to do those well so that they can go out and build their own power.
And you said that if if the person is when do you think this meeting is going nowhere?
Well, very often you know it's going nowhere in about 10 minutes, and then you start looking for a reason to go. But on the other time, but that's not the hard part. The hard part is when it's going so well that you're really connecting with the other person, and still you have to stop. Why is that? Because you promised them, I want to meet with you for 45 minutes. You don't want to break that promise. What you want to do is leave the meeting with them saying, I'd like to meet with you again, and you saying, I'd like to meet with you again. The second meeting is the important one, where you know that that's somebody that has some similar interest to you, similar passion, similar hungering and thirsting for justice, we used to call it. Those are the people that you want to go back to a second time, third time. You and I have had, what, 5 of these over the last few months, years, I mean, yes. 5 or 6 one-on-ones. And we know each other. I know what makes you tick, and you know what makes me tick. So when you call me up and say, will I be on your TV show? I don't ask why or what to do. I just say, sure.
Yes.
And when I ask you to write an article, an essay for my book, you say, sure.
Yes. So relationship need to exist before there is some work being done.
That's right.
Tell me in a this might be my last question, but I'm very thankful. I'm just taking it as a refresher course in my organizing skills there. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, can this count as one-on-one?
You know, since this pandemic, we've had to learn how to do these on like this one-on-one, on virtual, and it can be done. But you have to work even harder. You have to work even harder because you're not there. You're only using 1 or 2 senses. You're using hearing and seeing, but you can't touch the person. You can't smell the person. You can't get the entire feedback about who this person really is. But we have to do it. We have to do it this way until we can get back together.
One of the things which I have noticed quite a bit is, United Power doesn't care much for Facebook and social media and the website. It may be there, but that's not the primary organizing tool. Younger people nowadays are using those social media as a main organizing tool. And that's why the challenge for United Power is when physical distance is required for your personal health, how you still develop that relationship. So there got to be some new rules which must come into being.
Well, we've started having actions with politicians over Zoom. We have them come on Zoom and we show them 50 people or 80 people and we say yes or no, and they still say yes or no. And then we have a relationship. I want to tell you a quick story about my daughter, who's about 30 years old and loves social media. And we were having an action down at McCormick Place around gun violence with the International Association of Police Chiefs. And I had a goal of, I was supposed to turn out 50 people. And I asked my daughter, could you turn out 10? Oh, sure, Dad. And she kept assuring me right up until the day of the action that she had 10 people coming. Nobody else showed up, just her. They all promised her that they would come. But one of my Muslim friends, Osama Jamal, who you know.
Yes.
I said to Osama, can you deliver a busload of Muslims to this action? And he said yes. And so as the action was getting ready, I was getting nervous because we didn't have enough people. But then up pulls the bus with 25 Muslims, all prepared with signs and everything. And we had a great action that day too. And that was because of my relationship with him and his relationship with those people that came with him.
All right. So the relationship is the building block of power. Could I say that?
Right. Yes, that's it. You've got it.
Well, thank you so much, Greg Pierce. Greg Pierce is an award-winning, a best-selling author. He is also an organizer and a leader of Industrial Area Foundation and United Power. for Action and Justice, and he was the leader. I worked with him when Illinois turned from 48th worst state when it comes to healthcare in America to second best. Thank you so much for your work for the community, Greg Pierce.
Peace.
Peace, salam. And you can all